may we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. May it be so. So good morning, everyone. Good morning, Peter. Good morning, Vani. It's just good to see you all. So we're studying, of course, Swami, the collection of Swami Prabhavananda's lectures, transcribed and called Realizing God. These were talks delivered from 1938 to 1976. The Swami would often, well, most always give the same lecture once a year. Of course, it would change over the years. And so Nalini, who left the body on August 12th of this year, Edith Tipple, very devotedly gathered together all of these talks and all of the transcriptions of a particular talk. She compared them and selected the best from each of those talks and combined them in one transcribed talk, so to speak. So this morning we're taking up the talk Karma and Grace. Now, this is of great interest to all of us. All of us want to know what is the influence of my karma on my life, and how does grace play into this? So here is an answer, and I say an answer because, as Swami Vivekananda pointed out and Sri Ramakrishna pointed out, there is no one answer to these questions. We're dealing with infinity. We're dealing with the eternal changeless. So there cannot be just one definitive answer. But Swami Prabhavananda was recognized as an illumined soul. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And so this is his answer to the relationship between karma and grace. Karma is a Sanskrit word which means work or action. Mind is active as well as body, but try to think of God. Wait a minute. Oh, I tell you, this is so maddening. Excuse me, this system. All right. Karma is a Sanskrit word which means work or action. Mind is active as well as body, so thoughts are also considered work. Not only conscious thoughts, but subconscious and unconscious thoughts or reflex actions. And that is not all. Any act done or any thought is not lost. Each creates an impression in the mind. Now, this is something for us to really keep firmly in focus. We too are that eternal being. And everything that happens in our presence leaves an impression. And those impressions can be strong or weak, but they are there. And so can be reactivated by a touch of the gunas. You see, back to the Swami, you see a thought arises And though you forget it, it is not lost. It has created an impression in your mind. You do a good or bad action, and then you forget it. But that action has created an impression in your mind. The sum total of those impressions form the character of an individual. And this is so very, very crucial for us to absorb. We are the sum total of everything that has happened in universe, especially those things that have happened to us.
Brother, I have a question, if I could interrupt.
Please, Peter.
Thank you. Do we consider these impressions as vasanas? Would that be another name for them, perhaps?
Samskaras, vasanas, yes.
Okay.
Vasanas, the difference between samskara, at least in a technical sense, a samskara is a particular mental impression, a group of associated mental impressions. For example, a person who overeats, as I did at one time, there are a number of different samskaras that play into that habit of eating, of overeating. Technically, those together make a vasana. So our habits, a particular habit of thinking or being, a way of being, tend not to be the product of a single mental impression, but many. And mindfulness meditation, insight meditation, is one way to address this. But it's not what's recommended by the Ramakrishna order, simply because they compare it to a forest in which it's too easy to get lost. And so what the Ramakrishna order, what comes down from Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Vivekananda, and Raja Maharaj, is it's better to learn to control the mind rather than explore the mind in the way that insight meditation or mindfulness meditation does. The reason being that you'll become acquainted, as you learn to control the mind, you will become acquainted with the contents of your waking awareness and your active subconscious, and for that matter, your latent subconscious over many years, after many years, the latent subconscious or unconscious. And so one needn't go looking for these things, they come looking for us as we try to practice meditation.
Yes.
So this is the attitude taken by the Ramakrishna order, and the character of the initiation that they give emphasizes, generally speaking, not universally for everyone, but generally speaking, mantra meditation.
Thank you, brother. That was very helpful.
So thank you. So the sum total of all the impressions since you were formed as a soul, all those impressions are in your awareness. They may not be in your waking awareness, but they're there. And so the sum total of all those impressions form the character of an individual. All impressions remain in the subconscious mind. It is not that there is a conscious mind, a subconscious mind, and an unconscious mind, but that the one mind has these three levels. And this is what you so emphatically discover as you practice contemplation, concentration, and meditation. You actually sink through these three levels toward and finally into silence. So it's not that the mind is divided, it just has these three levels. The conscious mind is on another level is the subconscious, and on another level, the unconscious. That is not all. Each action, each thought, not only helps to form an individual character, but certain experiences which they bring into our lives, whether happiness or misery, are the results of our past actions, good or bad. The word, where you have to remember, the word action here means not only physical actions, but thought and speech, what we've said and what we've thought. Now, in the Kali Yuga, we're not held as responsible for our thoughts. Our thoughts don't create karma in the same way they do in other times of the other eras, other yugas. That doesn't mean you should consider your thoughts as exempt and so let them run wild. That won't serve you well. But at least there's some comfort in knowing that when I've had, as a result of some experience, a strongly bad thought or negative thought, it's not as powerful a karmic influence on me as it might have been 100,000 years ago. Happiness or misery are the results of our past actions, good or bad. So the word karma refers to what we call the law of karma. It is the law of causation. Just as in the physical world, the law of causation works inevitably. Put your finger in the fire and it will burn. Similarly, this law of causation works on the mental and moral planes. You raise a wave of love and it comes back to you, bringing happiness. You raise a wave of hatred and it brings back suffering. And this is one of the things for us to really carefully consider, that when we have strong negative feelings up to and including hatred for another person or thing, it doesn't affect that thing at all. It affects only us. I mean, if you express it to that person in words or actions, then it might have an effect on them. But the effect on you is much stronger and much longer lasting. If we raise a thought of hatred, it brings back suffering. There are both good actions and thoughts and bad actions and thoughts. We are a mixture of both. In the Bible, we read, "As a man soweth, so he will reap. As a man soweth, so shall he reap." In the modern translations of the Bible, "As ye sow, so shall ye reap." In Hindu scripture, Manu, the lawgiver, says, "Thou canst not gather what thou dost not sow. As thou dost plant the tree, so it will grow." So exactly the same message in two different languages at two different times. So I'll repeat what Manu said. "Thou canst not gather what thou dost not sow. As thou dost plant the tree, so it will grow. So this actually adds a dimension to as ye sow, so shall ye reap, because he says, as you plant the tree, so it will grow. So if you plant a tree that requires full sunshine in the shade, it's not going to grow properly. This has a very, very important component in dealing with our children, especially. Dealing with other people as well as ourselves. But Manu adding this, as you plant the tree, so it will grow. There's this more subtle dimension to this. It isn't just that you plant a tree and therefore the fruit will come. Well, maybe. If you've planted the tree correctly, if you planted it in the right place, if you nurture it and water it and fertilize it well, then you will reap the fruit. So this is the extra dimension in what Manu is saying. You see, our suffering and happiness are of our own making. Nobody else is responsible. We often think that those people who are the messengers for our karma are responsible for our unhappiness. Oh, what that person did to me or said to me. No, that person was just the delivery person. They delivered your karma helplessly. They delivered your karma. But the responsibility for what happened to you, what was said to you, is entirely your own. You see, our suffering and our happiness are of our own making. Nobody else is responsible. We have created certain tendencies in our lives, and we are bound by them. When you have formed a habit, such as drinking or smoking, you have created a tendency. And by the by, even illumined souls can create bad tendencies. Swami Prabhavananda was, for some years, a chain smoker. Literally, he would light one cigarette from another. He was a true chain smoker. It was a nervous habit that he developed, and it cost him dearly as he got into his 60s and 70s and finally passed away at age 83. It cost him in terms of congestive heart failure, breathing difficulty, a lot of difficulties. So don't think, oh, well, I'm different because I make bad habits. No. When you have formed a habit, such as drinking or smoking, you have created a tendency. Now, Peter, this tendency that combines samskaras that result in this tendency, the tendency is the vasana.
I understand.
Okay,
Yes.
You can't help yourself. You have to think. You can't help yourself. You have to think, you have to smoke. You have to drink, I'm sorry. If you've formed a habit such as drinking or smoking, you've created a tendency. You can't help yourself. You have to drink, you have to smoke. But the law of karma teaches something further. True, you have created a tendency in yourself, no doubt, and you feel you are forced to repeat it. But there is something in the back of your consciousness. There is something in the back of your consciousness that says, no, I have the freedom to resist it. you can't exactly call that free will, because the will is a compound of your various characteristics, and as such is sometimes helpless. Here's another distinction for us to take to heart. You can't exactly call that free will, because the will is a compound of our various characteristics, and as such is sometimes helpless. Is there any question or comment about that particular distinction? Because free will and our what is free and what is not free, and what the Swami means by helpless, if we're all clear about that, it's what alcoholics mean when they say, I am powerless over alcohol. I am powerless. So I've come to AA for you, the combined moral and loving force of this group, to help me gain power over myself. And ultimately, of course, as you do the steps in AA, you take you understand that all of the power comes from what they refer to as the higher power, the God of your understanding. But we may sometimes feel helpless in the face of what we're experiencing, particularly those things that are repetitive. But there is a freedom, the freedom of the Atman. This is exactly what I was pointing to when in the AA, when it says, ultimately they come to the understanding that the power that they're talking about comes from the higher power, which in this case is called the Atman. But there is a freedom, the freedom of the Atman. This is what we must learn. And the Swami doesn't toss the word must around. You know, he's not a dogma guy. Okay? But there is a freedom, the freedom of the Atman. This is what we must learn. And this is the most wonderful truth taught in Vedanta, that there is the Atman within, which is free by its inherent nature. Your true nature is free and you are divine. Yes, you have formed a habit, but you can resist it. You can create another habit to overcome it. When Swami Prabhavananda was finally convinced by a doctor that he was doing himself real damage by this smoking, the Swami quit. And it was very difficult. The monks and nuns who worked most closely with him said it was just hell for a couple of weeks. But he did it. He stopped smoking. Your true nature is free, and you are divine. Yes, you have formed a habit, but you can resist it. You can create another habit to overcome it. This, of course, is the freedom of divinity, the freedom of the Atman asserting itself. This is where people get confused. They say, oh, I thought the Atman and Brahman were identical. Brahman is attributeless. Brahman does not act. No. There is Nirguna Brahman, the Brahman that is actionless, attributeless, can only be spoken of as Satchidananda. And then there is Saguna Brahman, which is spoken of as Atman or Shakti or Ishvara. It does have intentions and it can take action. That's what the Swami is pointing to here. The freedom of divinity, the freedom of the Atman asserting itself. Saguna Brahman, the Ishvara within, the living presence within, asserting itself to create greater freedom, less limitation, because this habit that you want to be rid of is a limitation that you no longer wish to experience. So when we have recourse to the Atman, the freedom of the Atman asserting itself, there is no individual in this world who can be so bad as to be lost forever. There is no individual in this world who can be so bad as to be lost forever. However wicked you may be, and you suffer for your wickedness in one life or another. And this addresses a question that was brought up, I think, last Sunday by someone saying, people seem to get away with their wickedness. The Swami addresses that directly here. Howsoever wicked you may be, and you suffer for your wickedness in one life or another, freedom asserts itself, and ultimately you attain freedom, salvation, liberation, union with God, whatever name you may give it. Notice, non-dogmatic. Each of these things has a slightly different flavor to it, doesn't it? Freedom, salvation, the Christian term, liberation, one of the terms used by Sanatana Dharma, union with God, used by the subset of Sanatana Dharma called bhakti. Whatever name you may give it. So however you like to think about your state of freedom, that name is just fine. You have the ego, ignorance, and you have to struggle with it. What is this ego? This ego is a mistaken impression, mental impression that you've formed over a long, long, long period of time. God knows how long. That you are a separate being because the divine presence in the form of the I maker, ahamkara, reflects itself in the sheaths of your body, particularly the first three, the food body, the energy body, and the mind body. Those three experience this reflection of I-ness and says, that's me. I am this body. I am this energy. I am this mind. When in fact, it's just a reflection. That's what the ego is. And so that's what the Swami says, we have to struggle with it. We have to struggle with this delusion, this mistaken idea that we are a separate being because we have this reflected consciousness, this reflected consciousness I call awareness. It's consciousness being reflected in this unit, this action and experience suit. So we think we are a separate being. It's totally an illusion. Where did the illusion come from? Not from you. from God's desire to experience manyness. I am one, I shall become many. Now that doesn't work if all of us immediately recognize, wait a minute, I'm not many, I'm part of the one, I am the one. Not just part of the one, I am the one. So this is why St. Francis of Assisi says that because of our willingness to experience this, our willingness to be God in this way, St. Francis of Assisi says, God's admiration for us is infinitely greater than anything we can conjure up for him. Because God, the divine presence, in the form of Ishvara, Ishwari, God the Father, God the Mother, understands what it is for us to do this and be this, to experience this sense of separation. And this is why St. Francis of Assisi says also that God comes quickly to anyone who weeps over this condition, weeps over their sense of separation, and yearns for their union, or laughs. God comes quickly to those who weep or who laugh. Laugh because we see it as a tragic comic thing. And you find this in the work of many, many artists, many, many artists. Artists in all of the forms of art, particularly in music. You find this laughter. In poetry also. So you have the ego, ignorance of your true state, and you have to struggle with it. But there are two kinds of ego. One, unripe, the other ripe. The unripe ego feels, I am so intelligent, I am so great, I am so rich, I am so big, I am so famous. What are these called? These are limitations. Nothing of that is nearly as grand as what you truly are. So the unripe ego feels, I am so intelligent, I am so great, I am so rich, I am so big, I am so famous. That is to be shunned. The ripe ego says, I am a child of God, I am a servant of God. Which of course is the truth of the matter. And why God loves us so and admires us so. Because he created us so that there could be manyness. As Chaitanya's prayer says, a drowning man in this world's fearful ocean. And you just change the pronoun. A drowning woman in this world's fearful ocean is thy servant, O sweet one. In thy mercy, consider me as dust beneath thy feet. Now, the dust beneath the feet of the divine is, of course, in intimate contact with the divine. And if you are safely the dust beneath the divine's loving feet, O sweet one, then you are no longer drowning in this world's fearful ocean. A drowning woman, a drowning man in this world's fearful ocean is thy servant, O sweet one. And that's the truth of the matter. In thy mercy, consider me as dust beneath thy feet. I am a child of God. I am a servant of God, the ripe ego says. We have to take the help. We have to take the help of the ripe ego. As in the Gita we read, what is a man's will and how shall he use it? Let him put forth his effort to uncover the Atman, not to hide the Atman. And all our limitations are nothing more than coverings, which is the literal meaning of upadhi, a covering for the Atman. So let him put forth his effort to uncover the Atman, not to hide the Atman. In other words, to throw off the coverings. Man's will is the only friend of the Atman. His will is also the Atman's enemy. If you persist in being in love with your coverings, if you persist in insisting that they are the truth, well, then you're the enemy of the Atman. It isn't felt as an enemyship like a political enemy or something like that. The Atman is ever patient and ever loving. But nevertheless, that's how you're acting. The Atman's will is to reveal itself, to return to its glory. So the Swami says, you are your own savior, your own friend, and you are your own enemy. Savior and enemy are not outside of you. Now, all of us, and I'm sure this is true of every one of us, certainly it's true of me, we've been in a situation where someone is persecuting us. Be it a boss, a parent, someone that you're in an association with in some other way. Are they the enemy? No. And this is so hard to come to grips with. Your own being is the enemy, and this is your karma, and that person is the delivery person for your karma. So when you are being persecuted, you are being your own enemy, and the persecutor is just the delivery person for your karma. Savior and enemy are not outside of you. There is a struggle to take refuge in God. Who will do that? You have to do that. And again, mind you, the Swami does not use words like have to carelessly. If you are to be free, you have to do that. There is a struggle to take refuge in God. Who will do that? You have to do that. Your mind has to do that. Your will has to do that. There is the misunderstanding that becoming absorbed in God, you lose your personality, your individuality, but that is not so. The ego, your individuality, has no reality but passes away like a shadow when the reality is experienced. Let me tell you a story about Swami Prabhavananda. As I said, Swami Prabhavananda was a realized soul. He was also a quirky, charming, intelligent, absolutely winning personality. So one time in a class, the Swami this was said, "Oh, Swami, if I follow your instructions and I become illumined, I attain samadhi, won't I lose everything? Won't I lose my personality? Won't I lose my individuality?" The very words that are being used here. And this Swami just laughed. And so he said, "No, you don't lose anything. You gain everything." And what was so funny is this same person who asked that in the class. If outside of the class you had asked them, "Well, do you think Swami Prabhavananda is an illumined soul?" They would have said, "Oh, absolutely, certainly so, yes." So there was this two-track thinking going on in that person's mind, that the Swami could be illumined and yet retain this wonderful, charming, quirky, absolutely winning personality. And yet somehow they would lose everything if they attained that state. No, you lose nothing. You gain everything. That doesn't mean the personality becomes any more real. It will pass away with the body. But it's there in your individuality. Everything that is added up to who you are at that very moment will continue to be there. Adi Shankaracharya addresses this very explicitly in the last two chapters of Vivekachudamani. There is the misunderstanding that becoming absorbed in God, you lose your personality, your individuality. But that is not so. The ego, your individuality, has no reality, but passes away like a shadow when the reality is experienced. Edwin Arnold said that a dewdrop is mixed in the ocean and that you are a dewdrop and you get absorbed in the ocean. But that's not it. You are not a dewdrop. You are the ocean. There is one ocean of existence, one ocean of knowledge, one ocean of bliss, and you are that. I am that. Everybody is that. Suppose you are one of the waves of the ocean. Is that a dewdrop? You are the whole ocean. Realize what you are. And so instead of losing capabilities and attributes and individuality and personality, you gain access to far more than you ever were before. Realize what you are. You are the ocean in all of its characteristics, the ocean of consciousness. And so this is why in Patanjali, in chapter 4, he says the final barrier that you cross is that you become omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. The only thing you don't share with the Creator is you cannot create the universe, nor can you destroy, that is, transform the universe. But you can nurture and sustain the universe. You become one with what we call Vishnu in your omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience. That's what you are. It isn't that ever wasn't the case. It was just covered up. It is taught that you have to devote yourself to God, to fix your heart and mind in God, to meditate and meditate. Shall we then give up action? Shall we give up work? Shall we give up duties of life? Shall we give up the duties of life? Shall we cease to think? Is that possible? Now, where does karma attach itself? Let us try to find that out first. The Atman, now where does karma attach itself? Let us try to find that out first. The Atman within, the indwelling God, is Sat, Chit, and Ananda, eternal life, pure consciousness, and abiding love and infinite bliss. Its intrinsic nature is free. It is never bound. You are never bound, but you are dreaming this dream. Why? Because you identify yourself with body, mind, senses, and sense organs. The first begotten son of ignorance is the sense of ego. I am this body. I weigh so many pounds. I have to diet. Something arises in the mind. Oh, I am happy. Or my mind is restless. Or I feel so lazy. We assign the attributes of the coverings of the Atman to the Atman. Now, shall we blame ourselves for this? Absolutely not. Recognize it, struggle against it, but never blame yourself for it. This dream is powerful because it is Brahman's dream. Brahman said, I am one, I shall become many. That's why it's so compelling, so convincing, this dream. It has Brahman's power. But Brahman's power will undo it if you yearn to have it undone. So don't blame yourself for your ignorance or for the fact that you cooperate with your ignorance. It is not called Mahamaya for nothing. Mahamaya is the power of Brahman's dream. Maya is the source of the universe. When it represents itself as the dream, it is called Mahamaya or Shakti. And it is the power of Brahman's dream. So we assign the attributes of the coverings of the Atman to the Atman. This is our ignorance. This is our ego. We think that Atman, we think that our ego, our small, our unripe ego self is that Atman. No. But in your sense of that, in your belief in that, when you come to the conclusion that, oh, I'm mistaken, a lot of people begin to feel badly about themselves. Oh, how bad I am for being so mistaken. No. Emphatically, no. This dream is Brahman's dream, and it is very compelling. Brahman wanted, for reasons we can never even begin to fathom, Brahman wanted to become many. But as Vasishta points out, as Adi Shankaracharya points out, as the Advaitists point out, nothing ever really happened. Just as when you lie down and go to sleep at night, you have a dream. And in the world of your action and experience suit, the world of your interaction with the rest of us, none of that ever really happened. So Brahman's dream, in its absolute sense, never really happens. It is just, as Vasishta says, a vibration of consciousness. Because Brahman said, I am one, I shall become many, this set off a vibration in consciousness. The gunas that were in perfect equilibrium are now out of equilibrium and combining and combining and combining with one another in this anti-entropic frenzy that results in what we see right and experience right now. Anti-entropic means becoming more complex and more specialized. And if you look at the history of the universe, that's exactly what happened. At first, there was nothing but an unimaginably hot plasma, which is not a thing. It's a state of energy. It's not a thing. As it cooled, it began to make things. Due to the actions of the gunas, it made more and more complex and more specialized things until here we are. Here we are. And it's not over yet. The kalpa isn't over. The day of Brahma is not over. God only knows what yet will come. Because it goes through this cycle of yugas. We're coming to the end of one yuga. The Kali Yuga, we're told. And entering a very long golden age, the age of truth, Satya, the age of pure existence, which has been metaphorized in the Judeo-Christian tradition as the Garden of Eden. So before we go on, which we'll do next week, to how do we get out of this, we've got some time left, and plenty of time for those people who wish to stay on. Any comments or questions? Anything you'd like to share?
Jai Thakur.
Yes.
This is Vijay.
Yes, Vijay.
Namaste. Brother Shankara, I don't know if we have time, but I have 3 questions. So we'll attend to what we have time for. And my first question is, yes, the karmas are mine. And if there is a persecutor that I perceive, the persecutor is only a delivery person, as you said. However, that delivery person has his or her own ego, has his or her own karmas, which are acting and interacting and making him or her say or deliver the words or actions that he or she is delivering. Therefore, as a receiver, isn't it up to me also as my duty to use my buddhi to accept to the best of my ability what I believe is the truth or untruth being delivered to me?
The short answer to that question is yes. The fundamental misapprehension that underlies the question itself is that there is any doer but the gunas, you or the person speaking to you. This is why Swami Vivekananda said, praiser praised, blamer blamed are one. Praiser praised, blamer blamed are one. We're always very happy to receive praise. And we don't even think, oh, this is the same kind of interaction that I have when someone's blaming me. You wouldn't think, would you, that it's that person's karmas and their da-da-da-da, all that you said, that is causing them to do this. No, we take it as, oh, I did a good thing and I'm being recognized for it. But the same syllogism is there, the exact same mechanism is there. And the fundamental misapprehension is that anything is happening except the gunas attaching themselves to gunas, which is this action, this vibration of consciousness of the one. Praiser praised, blamer blamed are one.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. So, am I correct that I cannot plainly accept that it's all my karma is being delivered back to me by the persecutor? I have to discern how much of it seems right.
No, you don't. You don't have to discern how much of it is right at all. You don't have to pay any attention to it at all. Your decision to pay attention to it is your decision to be distracted from the truth. Purely, plainly, and simply. And it is just a game that we play with our left mind to discern. We say it's the buddhi, it's not the buddhi. It's the left mind. Playing the game of am I right or am I wrong? What difference does it make? What's done is done. Go forward. Don't think about it anymore.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. My second question.
Well, hang on just a second. Let's
Sure.
see if anybody else has a question or comment before we go on to your second question.
Brother
Yes.
This is Haima.
Yes, Haima.
This is Haima, Brother Shankara.
Yeah, I know. Come on.
This chapter could not have come at any better time than this week. Excellent chapter, Karma and Grace.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect topic for present time. I mean, we can see so much of unripe ego around us, which agitates us sometimes. Yesterday, I had to sit extra 15 minutes meditation because I was so insensitive to the news. I just had to forgive myself after sitting extra 15 minutes more than what I usually do.
Well, good.
Yes, that helped me a lot. That helped me a lot to get it over, get back to my right ego. So thank you so much. This is an excellent topic today. Just
good. I'm
yes.
glad that
You so much.
you feel that way. I'm glad you feel that way.
Thank you.
And yes, it's like the Zen saying, if you can't sit for 20 minutes, you'd better sit for an hour.
Yes, exactly. I had to do that yesterday. I really had to do that just to forgive myself for being so insensitive to my feelings towards someone who had brought it upon themselves. So I thought I need to sit longer. And thank you. This is a great chapter. Great chapter.
Good. Wonderful. Well, it's the Swami.
Yes. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, Brother Shankara, you said in this Kali Yuga, what the thoughts do not make an impression or something like that?
No, they make an impression on us, but they do not generate either positive or negative karma to the extent that they do in other ages. The
How's that?
reason being that we are so distracted. As Sri Ramakrishna remarked on it, he summarized it by saying, we are so dependent on food. By that he meant external stimulation. Of course he meant food, but and we're much more dependent on food than those will be particularly in the height of the golden age. They'll hardly have to eat at all. But the fact is that we are very dependent on stimulation, and our unripe ego is such that we identify stimulation with that's who we are. We are our experiences. We are not our experiences, but that's how we think. And so because we're so distracted, it's so hard for us to control the mind that our mind's activities do not weigh as heavily in the book of karma, so to speak, as they do in other ages. That's what we're told. So, but our speech and our actions still, if we allow our thoughts to translate into speech and actions, no difference there. Is that clear?
Yes, and also you're saying in Kali Yuga, we are not as conscious of our thoughts or the power of our thoughts?
Well, you can answer that question, are you? I mean, it's very difficult for us to become aware of our thoughts. We have to learn how to sit quietly.
Yes.
And then begin to see what the contents of our waking awareness are. Most of us are so hypnotized by the contents of our waking awareness, we're not even aware that those thoughts are coming and going. We're not aware of what's happening in any given moment. It just comes and it goes and it comes and it goes. And we don't really give it any consideration at all.
So we have to work with not only the quality of the thoughts and also the quantity of the thoughts. I mean, that is equally important.
That is the optimum, yes. That is what happens when we practice japam, contemplation, concentration, and meditation. Slowly and slowly, the number of thoughts decrease, the quality of the thoughts increase, that is, they become more sattvic, until finally they come very close to or maybe even cease altogether and we sink into silence.
Okay, thank you.
It's a long road to walk, but it is well worth walking.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Brother Shankara, this is
Yes, dear Michele.
So we have to constantly just really be a thought watcher, is what you're saying. Really, is it? You have to step outside of the dream, right?
How well said. Virtually the same words said by Saint Teresa of Avila. The seams of my garment are torn. I step outside and see what it is that's happening. So yes, that's it. We have to become the witness. The witness is the face of the Atman. The witness is the face of the Atman, just the face. But nevertheless, it's what interacts with directly our thoughts, especially. Also our actions, also our speech, but we come to understand that our speech and our actions are the product of our thoughts, and we become less reactive and more action. That is to say, we rather than react and simply act from habit or reflex, we act based on seeing what it is that's actually happening.
Thank
So
you.
very well said, Michaeli. That's exactly it.
It's not easy.
Oh no, it's simple in concept, like all of this. Become the witness. Become a good skier. The distance between become a good skier and being a good skier is a good distance in time and space. Same thing with becoming a watcher of your thoughts. But practicing any form of contemplation, concentration, and meditation produces that effect spontaneously. We learn how to do it by seeing the thoughts that try to interrupt us as we're trying to contemplate, concentrate, or meditate. So we see, oh, that's the source of thoughts. That's where it's coming from. That's who I think I am. Thank you, Michaeli. Anything else? Okay, Vijay, your second question, if you still have it in mind. He seems to have disappeared.
Yes, Mr. Shankara. Earlier,
I can't hear you now.
let me check my.
You seem to be muted. I can't hear you. I can hear that you're speaking, but I can't hear what you're saying.
Just a moment.
There it is. Now you're there.
Okay, thank you. Earlier in today's sermon, I heard that Atman is Ishvara. However, I have thus far looked at my Atman as the Nirgun Brahma.
Well,
Atman as the
that was
witness.
just a mistake. That was just a mistake.
Okay.
It was just a misapprehension of what was meant.
Okay.
Now, I'm glad you clarified that. But Atman as a witness is not the doer, but Ishvara is the doer. That's what caused the confusion in my mind.
There's only one. There's only one. There's only one. BJ, there are not two. It only seems to these levels and aspects of our mind that there are these differences. That's part of our ignorance. Ishvara, the doer, through the power of the gunas. Ishvara, the Atman. Ishvara, the witness. I mean, how much clearly does Krishna have to say it? I am doing everything. It only seems to us that there are these differentiations and distinctions. So the Atman is Saguna Brahman. Otherwise, it could not witness, it could not sanction all the things that Krishna speaks about in the in the Gita. The Atman is the interactive aspect of Brahman with us. Brahman is Nirguna and Brahman is Saguna. With attributes, Saguna. Without attributes, Nirguna. We can't say anything at all. We can't know anything at all about Nirguna Brahman. We can say those words. They're utterly meaningless to us because there is no knower in the realized state called Nirguna Brahman. The intellect and the mind, all of the sheaths have been left behind. Now, I can say those words, and I can have an intellectual understanding of what they mean, but that's the end of it.
Thank you.
Even
very much.
Sri Ramakrishna could not express what Nirguna Brahman is, or what it is to be in that realized state of being one with Brahman.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for asking the question. It is one of our fundamental misunderstandings, that there is something other than one. Anyone else?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear. Swami,
Yes.
hear from you.
Are the vasanas in the present embodiment influenced by vasanas from previous births? For example, taking alcoholism as a example, there are some that respond better to treatment than others, and within the same family, there are some who become alcoholics, whereas the others are able to not fall into that, even though they may be the same environment or culture. So do previous vasanas influence the present?
There is no such thing as previous vasanas. There is just the vasanas, a particular vasana. It may express itself in this lifetime or not express itself in this lifetime. It depends on all the other karmic circumstances. So, but once again, we have this illusion of time and space. It's necessary for the dream to persist, but it's not a truth. It is as in the Chandi said, as it says in the Chandi, Mother, minutes, moments, and other divisions of time you bring about so that there can be change in things, and thus you have the power to destroy the universe. And that can be so for us individually. Huh? Mother can stop this perception of endless change and thus destroy our universe. The universe will ultimately destroy itself. That's one of the amazing discoveries of the Higgs boson. But the fact of the matter is that the vasana that exists now is in one sense timeless, and in one sense has been built up since the very beginning of time, since time zero. Now, just exactly when jivas were created in this, it's spoken of in the Vedas, but as virtually every Swami I've ever talked to says, and some just won't talk about it, but we just don't understand what's meant and what's said in the Vedas about when jivas were created, because we don't understand the time component. And do our samskaras have a component, and therefore our vasanas have a component that predates the gunas coming together to form this particular jiva, this particular subtle body and later gross body? Oh, it's explained in great and complex detail in Sankhya philosophy. And Swami Prabhavananda said, it's simply a waste of time to learn that. Chant your mantra instead. Thank you for asking that question.
Thank you, Brother.
You know, it's so, these words, we have to understand, and we really do have to understand if we're going to be balanced about receiving this information, is that it is all only gestures. Anything in spoken language is so imprecise. That's why the language of mathematics was invented, so that there would be a precise language in which to express concepts like energy and matter are the same. To those who truly understand mathematics, they understand much more from these symbols that are put together, E equals mc squared. That's a very concise and very as accurate as things can be within mind statement. Energy and matter are the same, just in two different states. But if I say to you, energy and matter are the same in two different states, what does that mean? I mean, the more we understand of chemistry and physics, the more we understand what those words are gesturing to. But this is why it's best for us to dispel the illusion. This is what we're going to talk about next week in this particular lecture. It starts out, how do we get out of this? Well, yeah, how do we get out of this? We will forever be, particularly in the left mind, the left mind is a maze with no exit. The left mind is a maze with no exit. If you remember in Alice in Wonderland, Alice finds her way into a maze with no exit. And how she gets out is magical. It's not, there is no exit to the maze. And Swami Vivekananda said of Lewis Carroll that he had the greatest grasp of how the human mind works of any writer that the Swami had ever encountered. Anything else from anyone?
Hari Om Shankaraji.
Hari Om Balaji.
Because I'm trying to understand a couple of things, because, you know, when we say Karan Sarira, that is nothing but avidya, that is what they call Maya and the vasanas and all those things.
Yes.
And I think the Swami here, they use the word freedom of divinity. That what he meant, because in the beginning he was talking about, do we have a free will and all those things? But at the end, he came to the conclusion is freedom of divinity. In other words, surrender to, the Lord. In other words, have that ripe ego. And the ripe ego is by understanding the avidya to the vidya maya. Are the, I think this is all of the same nature. So it is all the ego that puts us down. I mean, this is what I'm just trying to understand. So,
Well, it is the ego is a word for our ignorance and confusion.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. It comes with the package. It comes even Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Vivekananda, Raja Maharaj, even they had to overcome Maya, the ignorance. When Christ said, I have overcome the world, this is what he meant. And the wonder is, these great ones come to do it for us. If we take any hold upon God in our prayer, it is by thy grace alone, since all thine austerities were practiced for our sake. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to what? To unchain us and set us free. So this is what that freedom is, the freedom of understanding, of being our divinity. And that is a gift that these divine beings, which is represented in us by the Atman, which is why Swami Prabhavananda's first instruction for meditation is the chosen ideal is you yourself. The chosen ideal and the word Atman are identical. The chosen ideal is you yourself, no different. Learn to feel that living presence. When we begin to feel that living presence, our self-identification changes from the unripe ego, that small self of belief in our desires and our restlessness and all of the things that go along with jivahood. When we begin to feel the divine presence and we begin to know, simply because it is a much better fit of clothes, so to speak, it feels so much more truly ourselves. So we naturally change. It's not a deliberate mental process. That's why the Swami says it has nothing to do with free will. The will that we have to bring to this is to struggle. If we struggle, we will become free. But after a time, we find that the struggle is not our volition. As the Chandi says, it is the mother's volition. It is Shakti's volition. Shakti has willed to set us free. And that comes in time. Time is an illusion, you say. Yeah, it's true. But nevertheless, the earth spins once on its axis every day, and it spins around the sun once every 365 days approximately. So patience, that's the second of Swami Prabhavananda's instructions for meditation. Patience. The third, perseverance. Even though it doesn't seem to be working, even though you don't seem to be getting any results, even though it seems like a dry desert where there's not a drop of water, persevere. Keep doing it. Keep doing your practice. And why? In the expectation that it's only dry because the fountain, that natural fountain within us, that artesian fountain within us, is still just covered up. So we keep doing it, we keep doing it, we keep doing it. And then something happens. And we discover, oh, it was there all the time. And this is why this is so sweet, this gathering of us together to encourage one another. Because anyone who for one instant would pretend that it's easy is just being glib at best or stupid at worst, acting stupidly. Because it's not easy. And this is why it's so grand and glorious to read the testimony, read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, read the testimony of those who have achieved. Read that book, Love Poems from God, the testimony of people who can say with utter conviction and very much believability, I am free, and you are too. So thank you for coming this morning or now this afternoon. Thank you for being with this. It's such a wonderful encouragement for us all. Anything further from anyone? Thank you, Balaji.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I had taken a couple of takeaway messages, and I wanted to say, just to make sure I understand correctly and to sort of reinforce. The two sentences I heard are, our will is to struggle, and Shakti has will to set us free. Is that, I heard, did I
Yes,
hear?
we must bend our volition, our will to the struggle. Not give up, not be daunted. And it is clearly in the person of Sri Ramakrishna, in the person of Jesus Christ, in the person of the Buddha, in the person of Krishna, in the person of Rama. It is their desire to set us free. If you remember Rama's wanderings in exile, he came across the camps of a number of different sages, of different characters. Some welcomed him in the spirit of, oh, Rama, you finally come, set us free. And others said, oh, Rama, here you are. We're busy with our Advaita. We'll host you, but then you be on your way. That's in Valmiki's Ramayana. We can accept the invitation of Avatar to take refuge in them and stay refuged. We do that by practicing contemplation, concentration, and meditation, so that we get some control of our mind, so that our mind doesn't pull us away. But even then, as Krishna says to Arjuna, when Arjuna asks, "Oh, Krishna, suppose I fall from the path of yoga. Won't I be lost both in this life and in the next? I'll have no home anywhere." And Sri Krishna, in one of the few instances in the Gita in which he does, he says, "No, my son, that's not how it works. Once you started on the path to Brahman, no effort is ever lost." And so this is why we can say to ourselves, each day I make a little effort, it's not lost. A few more drops are put in the bucket. Finally, the bucket will be full. We don't know when, we don't know how. We don't know even what the bucket is. We don't know what the bucket is. But Sri Krishna says absolutely, unequivocally, no effort is wasted. And even if you leave this life not having achieved liberation, first, Krishna says in other places in the Gita, well, I might give it to you anyway. But then he says, even if that doesn't happen, you'll be born into auspicious circumstances for you to continue your journey.
It's chapter 6.
Thank you, chapter 6. Who said that?
Naveen.
Oh, thank you, Naveen.
Shankaraji,
Yes, Bala.
well, there is a, regarding the bucket, there is a parable. Vivekananda says that once Narada was going to visit Vishnu, and he saw on his way two rishis. So they both were asking him, hey, could you ask Vishnu when we're going to get the moksha?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And on his way back, he tells the first rishi, oh, you have 3 more lives to go to get your, moksha. So that rishi, oh my God, 3 more weeks I had to go, 3 more lives I had to go through like this.
Right.
The second rishi, when he comes, he says, look at the tree. See how many leaves are there? You have to go through so many life cycles before you get the moksha. But that rishi starts jumping up and down with happiness. So for him, his bucket is so small, whatever it was.
Well, the secret here, Bala, you're right, this does gesture toward some sort of bucket. But the secret is gratitude.
Yes.
If we are grateful for this incredible adventure that we're on, which is, can we do it every day? No, no, no. But if on balance, from the heart, we're grateful for this adventure of being many. We join Brahman in his enjoyment of his dream. I say his, please don't think there's any gender to Brahman. We join Brahman in its enjoyment of its dream. There's great power in that. The Baal Shem Tov, I spoke about the Baal Shem Tov recently. The Baal Shem Tov said that is the most powerful. Simple gratitude is the most powerful. So that's why that second rishi, if you remember the end of that story, Bala, at least
Yes, I
in
do
one way
remember.
it's told, is that rishi begins to jump about and be happy and then disappears. The other fellow, was he wrong for being
No.
Was he wrong for being sorrowful that he had 3 more lives to live? No. But it isn't as productive as being grateful. Some days are easier than others, boy, howdy. As Haima pointed out, she had a tough day yesterday. She had to sit longer than her normal sit to recover her center. It's good that she knows that she can do that. And it's instructive to all of us. But really, there is that Zen saying. If you find that today you can't sit for 20 minutes, you'd better sit for an hour. Anything else from anyone? All right, dear hearts. This is so sweet. So I'll just close with this. Chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. O name, stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. O Lord and soul of the universe, mine is no prayer for wealth or retinue, the playthings of lust or the toys of fame. As many times as I may be reborn, grant me, O Lord, a steadfast love for thee. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. May it be so. Until next time, which is, if you wish, tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, self-discovery, self-actualization, self-realization according to the way of Karma Yoga. So, Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. Go in Mother's loving and protective embrace. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful in this dreadful time.
Thank you. Bye. Bye,
Bye-bye.
brother. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.